Alright, so this is the unexpected part 3 of this video series on close analysis of a text. In the first video, I tried to introduce the concept of close analysis and how it can apply to pretty much anything. In the second video, I actually did some analysis, so what we've done in the black is we've defined some keywords. In the blue, we've just focused on the sentence or little passage that we want to make the focal point of our analysis. And in the red, what I've done is I've tried to connect to other parts of the text. Now, this is by no means absolutely complete or absolutely comprehensive, but I'm just trying to model what it might look like. Okay, so in this third part, what I'm hoping to do is I'm going to try and connect to the wider context, the context beyond the macro context, beyond the text itself. Thinking about the historical context and other things that might be relevant. Okay, and then afterwards I'm going to try and draw some general conclusions. So we've been trying to focus on Tom Buchanan, which is who was a character from The Great Gatsby, and now I'm going to think about the historical context. So one thing that came to mind was the notion of the 1920s being a time of materialism. Okay. Now, in the 1920s, because of the economic boom, materialism and consumerism were seen as quite admired values, really, because people were now able to afford much more. They were able to have better lifestyles, and they were able to aim for more stuff, basically. Now, we know from our analysis and from our knowledge already that Tom is a pretty rich guy. He is from East Egg, and he basically inherited all of his money. What we can probably see from this example, though, is that materialism or owning a lot of stuff doesn't actually necessarily lead to satisfaction. In fact, having all of this stuff is actually a recipe for emptiness, because we know that he spends all of his time around people who are like him and who are in the same social status as him, but he can't actually find what he's looking for. So materialism doesn't necessarily lead to satisfaction. It may simply highlight how empty you are. Okay, so that's kind of one connection that I could make to the broader historical context. I'm also thinking particularly about the lost generation. One aspect of the lost generation of writers and of people who lived at the time, people who came back from World War I, is that they wanted to return to an idealized notion of the past. Which is what Tom wants to do. He wants to go back to his football game. He doesn't just want to go back to that, though. He wants to go back to a time when he was kind of at the peak of his existence. So we know that people wanted to go back to the past because they were disillusioned with life. They were disillusioned with the way that they were living, even though they might have been successful. So we can probably conclude that Tom is disillusioned. Okay. Anything else? Well, I think we could probably say that that is it for now. One thing that I would say, though, is that Fitzgerald was part of the lost generation. So we see a part of him in Tom. Okay. So what have we got here? We have drawn a lot of conclusions. And we can make some general conclusions about Tom Buchanan here. So what can we say about him? Well, if I can just scroll. Expand this out even further. General conclusions. What can we say? Well, we could probably say that Tom wants to repeat the past because he is disillusioned with life. He wants to go back to a time when he was at his peak, and he doesn't know how to do this. Spoiler alert, because it's impossible. Which is why he will be forever seeking a little wistfully. Okay? Some connections that I just thought about just then. If I look at this general conclusion, he wants to repeat the past, just like Gatsby. Right? So whilst Tom is kind of portrayed as an antagonist, he and Gatsby have the same kind of conflict in their lives, except the object of what they're trying to find is a bit different. And another thing that I've just remembered is that it says, I felt that Tom would drift on forever. Drifting is like being caught in the ocean. Which is the central metaphor in the novel on page 171. Okay, so this means that Tom Buchanan is actually reflected in a lot of us. What he's experiencing, the things that he's trying to work through, the conflicts in his life and the way that he deals with them in a pretty unadmirable manner, are things that we should be able to relate to, because the metaphor at the end of the novel applies to all humanity. At least at the time of writing, that's what Fitzgerald thought. Okay, so that is it. It's by no means complete, but hopefully that shows you how you can do close analysis and actually how you can draw a lot out of one little passage. So now we know a lot about Tom Buchanan, and actually we know pretty much the core of who he is, the core of his character. This is really what he's all about. So I hope that's been useful. Please feel free to rewatch some of the other videos in case you're a bit confused. What's really important is that you're able to go through all the steps yourself independently, and that will just come with repetition and practice. So I hope that's been useful. Please leave a comment if you have any questions, and I'll try my best to answer them.